Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors, your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Winston Chester. I'm glad you're here this morning. We'll get started with our weather brought to us by Haney Technical Center at 767-5500. Run by and see Principal Mike Heppenstall. Had him on the show yesterday. I know you enjoyed meeting him. Run by and see that staff out there and give them a visit and see what they have to offer you. Now, the temperature today is going to be up in the 70s, a high of 73 and a low tonight of 61, but on a 12-degree variance right there. But the big thing is the water temperature. I looked back on a record on January the 1st, the water temp was 64 degrees because we had a really warm Christmas break right there. It was 64, and then we had this cold weather that's dropped down to 61 this time last week, and then it all of a sudden started going back up. And this morning, the water temperature is 64 degrees. So we got the big number, of course, in March. We really start looking at it when it stays up there around 68, 67 degrees at a steady period of time. We start looking at those Spanish mackerel, but still a little bit early to look at them. But I had somebody post the other day. They're getting ready for cobia. They're saying March the 10th is going to be the first cobia spotted. So we're going to see and to see who's going to catch our first cobia this year. But that's right around the corner. But right now, we sort of, I feel like I'm right in the middle of hunting season, and we're going to talk about some of that a little bit later. But let's take a look at our river readings. The river readings right now, the Apalachicola Bluntstown is at a 0.5, and the Choctawhatchee at Caryville is at 4 foot. At 4 foot, and looking good there. Now, the tide chart now, the Choctawhatchee River has just been steady here for a little while, which is unusual because we always get a lot of ebb and flow in the Choctawhatchee River. But right now, this past weekend and next couple of days, it's going to be real steady. Now, looking at our tide chart, we're looking at a low tide this morning of 8:04 and a high tide at 11:34 tonight. And this will be our last strong tide of the week. We've talked about the rest of the week will be some neap tides and all. Okay, and we'll talk more about that again as the week goes by, and according to what the weather does, and it looks like we're going to have some rain off and on during the whole week and all. Now, just talked to Kerry at Panama City Beach Pier and got a report from him. Basically, this past weekend and yesterday, they really got into some flounder. Not a lot of flounder, but he says fairly steady. And on the beach pier at Pier Park, they're not catching a lot of whiting, but on the county pier, they're catching some whiting. And we're going to, each week at the beginning of the week, we try to give, on Monday or Tuesday, try to give a good pier report on what's happened for the weekend and all. But he told me about those pompano we mentioned last week when Bobby Graham called. He said they caught about 30 pompano right off the Panama City Beach Pier the day after I talked to him last week. So that was a good run right there. Everything just lined up. The tide was right, the water temperature was right, the stars are right, and most importantly, the fishermen were there. And they ran that little pompano hole out there, and they caught them. So let's take our first break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to this segment of Panhandle Outdoors. I'm glad you're here. We've got a lot of stuff to show you today. Let's get started with some pictures shared with us. I appreciate y'all sending all these pictures and sharing with our Panhandle Outdoors audience. Let's start off with some pigs. Okay, Amber Gray sent this. Amber, check this out. These are 3 little pigs. Amber said 3 pigs. She wrote this on it. 3 pigs came out at once, and Harris put the smackdown on them, and they went wee, 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 all the way to the ground. Good job there, and that's some really good meat right there. All right, let's go to another hunting picture right here. This is an outstanding buck, brought in a 10-point buck, brought in by a 14-year-old Weston Bizzle. Got this with a crossbow, hung up there with Captain Russell Underwood. Y'all know Captain Underwood, a longtime fisherman here, and that 10-point was brought in, and Russell is like a mentor to Weston. Weston works on weekends on his boats and all and does different things for him, and Russell has taken him under the wings and all, and he was just, that is a nice-looking buck. Got up there off Scotts Ferry Road up there in Youngstown. All right, now let's take a look at this next picture. This was some of that cold weather fishing when it got cold last week. Howard Farrow and his group of buddies, nice catches there, Howard. And now let's go to, y'all know Jeff Bardolph. Jeff comes on the show once a year, and we do that big fishing tournament in honor, in memory of his daughter. But now his other daughter got her first buck. Okay, this is Victoria Bardolph. It wasn't a buck, really. I think this is a little doe. First time she's ever been deer hunting, and she shot one time and got this doe, and I think That was a good shot, Victoria. I know you're excited about it. Jeff, good job taking them fishing. Also, we had Derek Fussell took them also. Derek Fussell took them. This next picture, now you don't see her face here. This is Dawn Branding. She's the SRO over at Merritt Brown Middle School. Gets to watch the show a good bit. One of my former students. Look at that cork to the left. She's getting ready for some spring fishing. Good job there, Dawn. All right, Miss Emily McCormick. She's been on the show before. Emily already catching some bass. You know, this weekend was so pretty and all. Bass realized that too. And Emily, now this was not a 8-pounder, but that's a nice pond they have up there in Wausau. And good job, Emily. Pretty smiled, and good to see you fishing. And then some more brim brought in. See, the brim's been biting also. So we've had some. It was a good weekend of fishing because of the weather just popped in really warm and all. All right, I got up Saturday morning, and I live right there on the coast on the bay and all. And that wind was just blowing. You know, it was blowing Saturday morning. It was blowing about 15 miles an hour. And you always say, well, I don't go to the woods, and it's gonna be blowing all that. But I always go, and I'm always rewarded like it was Saturday morning. You get up there about 45-minute drive up north, up around northern part of Calhoun County, close to Jackson County. And I go back to my place, and it's just still. It's just completely still. No wind, no breeze, anything. Just a beautiful morning. It was wet and damp, but it was a great morning to walk through the woods, and I got to see a buck and all. And I was just thinking, by the way, I saw the buck around 10 o'clock, around the feeding time, around 10 o'clock Saturday morning. I didn't get a chance to get a shot at him, but I know where he's going, so I'm going to try to go back and get him when I get some time. But anyway, to think about if you get up early in the morning, it's blowing here on the coast. That does not mean it's blowing up north of us. So you always don't ever go back to bed and say, oh, I'm not going to do anything. You'll regret it. So anyway, I always do that. Now, I wanted to share a couple other things with you too. I have a box full of periodicals, different periodicals. We always talking about we were fortunate to have Panhandle Outdoors here in the Panhandle, have a TV show on outdoors and all. But we also get aided by, Scott Lindsay does a newspaper article on outdoors on a Thursday morning, a Sunday morning. Always has a fresh article, always something interesting. I encourage you to read that article. But also we get some different periodicals. I'm just going to share them with you. This is one here. I got all these at Blue Water, but all these are free. Okay. Bucks at the Buzzer. We sort at the Buzz right now. This is the National Business of Sport. The sporting goods companies send these out, and they have some advertisement in it, but has some good articles. Okay, FLDA, the Florida Deer Association. The Florida Deer Association had this. They have a deer expo and all kind of things on if you're raising deer or want to know a lot about deer, have a special deer feed and all. That's there. This Coastline magazine, always keeping up. This is free. It's always around all along the Gulf Coast, Franklin County area, and got all kind of good information on it. The Coastal Angler, Panhandle Coastal Angler comes out. It's a free magazine, and it's got all kind of course, they got a lot of ads. I like reading these ads and all because they selling some good products and all. Coastal Angler, and here's one they have for Christmas. Has Santa Claus on it. Okay, again, all these are free. There's a great little magazine put out in South Georgia, really put out around the Bainbridge area. It's called Rifle and Rod. But they do such a good job, and it covers the Gulf Coast, especially, a lot of those Georgia boys come down to, we talk about how they come down to Franklin County and Gulf County. This is a really good magazine, well put together. The paper on it, a really nice paper, great pictures, and always got good fishing stuff and hunting stuff. Rifle and Rod, another free magazine here in this area. I guess my favorite would be, and the cost, of course, it would be Woods and Water magazine. The Woods and Water magazine, I love getting it. Off and on, I get a subscription to it. Most of the time, I just go to, when I'm pumping gas or something, I run there and buy it at whatever store I'm at. A lot of the junior stores have them and all. But the Woods and Water magazine has been out a long time, and it's like 120-something pages, 120-something pages coming out every month of the Woods and Water, the fishing and hunting all throughout, not just the Panhandle, but south of us and really different areas. They have little target areas they hit, but then they have general areas and all where they talk about it. So if you get a chance, all these magazines, now this is $250. You know what? They just went up last year. It was $250. This year in January 2013, they went up to $299. But it's well worth $299. All the information in here, great pictures and all. So all these will help out when you're pursuing trying to get more information all on the outdoors. Okay. Let's take our next break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We'll do a little segment that's a little bit different from just hunting and fishing right now. You know, as outdoorsmen, especially here in Panhandle, we're always talking about how much the good old days and all that. This book, this is my favorite novel. It's called A Land Remembered, and this is it right here. And I've talked about it a time or two on the show, but it covers about 3 generations of Florida cracker families as it came down from Georgia in the mid-1800s and goes through 3 generations, and it is one of the best-selling books of all time as far as historical fiction. And Patrick Smith wrote it, did a tremendous job researching it. He talks about the families coming on the cattle drives and the cracking and the whips and all, and how they fished and how they, we often wonder, could we live off the land? Well, with these families, these early families had to live off the land, and they would have those, they would have to catch their own fish and get their own game and to feed their family. And there's a fascinating look at our history and our heritage here in Florida, and the Florida Panhandle was the same as they came down with the cattle and then settled on around here and fished and all and supported their families on what they did. So I was able this past Sunday afternoon. Patrick Smith, by the way, is still living. He's 85 years old, lives in Merritt Island. And so he spent like a year and a half researching this book, going out with his Seminole Indian tribe and talking to these old cracker families and living with them and doing different things and all. But he's still living, 85 years old, lives, like I say, in Merritt Island, still lives in the same house that he moved into in 1966. No matter the great success, this book is published in most languages worldwide. It's a great hit in Russia and different places across the world. Just a wonderful book. But his son was in town. His son is doing a 20-day tour and talking about his dad's book and his dad's work, and just had some interviews with his dad. And the dad's not able to get out and do much anymore, but the son was in town. And I went down Sunday afternoon to the library, and I love listening to these things. And he had about a 2-hour presentation. I took my camera, and I did a little video of some of the highlights of his talk and all about A Land Remembered. And I would urge you to read this book. It's just a great book. But now the content, the video itself is not that clear because we're sort of in a dark. They darken the light so you can show some slides and all. But I encourage you to just listen to the content, the audio version, listen to the content of what he's saying about this landmark book, and what I think you would enjoy what he says. And at the end, we talked about. I said, why do you? I did a little interview with him at the end, and some of it shows up. He said, I said, why did he write? I had one question. Why did he write Land Remembered? He basically said because it was a story waiting to be told. No one else had done it. His dad just did a remarkable job. So let's watch this video on this is Rick Smith, Patrick Smith's son, talking about his dad's classic, best-selling Land Remembered.
I'm really overwhelmed to see this many people too, but to be honest, I'm not surprised because this is my 4th venue I've been to, and every one of them's been like this. It's just phenomenal. And I know it's not because you want to come hear me as much as you want to know about my dad. You want to hear some family dirt, don't you? I'm very honored to be out doing this and talking from my dad. It's rare that a book stays in print for a long time. This book originally came out in 1984. So I'm done. And today it's still in print. In fact, every year it sells more than the year before. And you can tell by the people in this room how much this book has affected people. And everywhere I go it's like this, and it's just a huge testament to my dad and to what he did with this book, how much it affects people. But if you don't know it, A Land Remembered is about this family called the McIvies, and they're pioneers into Florida. They'd left Georgia. They come down to Florida to try to stake a claim out in the scrub brush and the prairies out around Kissimmee. And then it comes forward, it follows 3 generations of that family. And I think, why is it so successful? Everybody says, well, what is it about that book? I think for the most part it's because people today can't even imagine that ever existed. Like I say, when I talk to people from California about Florida, immediately what comes to mind is Walt Disney World, SeaWorld, South Beach, all that stuff. And that's not really Florida. I mean, it is, but, it's not all that Florida's about. And I think people have it's such a shocking thing for them to read about the pioneers. And it occurred to me, like, I can say I had pioneer relatives, but we all did. You know that? All of you had grandparents and great-grandparents, and they had to live through hard times. And so you can kind of read this book and think about, yeah, my own grandparents had to suffer like that. And as that photo disappears there, I'm going to read you Dad's description of Tobias McIvy. He said, Tobias McIvy was 30 years old and had been in the Florida scrub for 5 years. He had come south out of Georgia in 1858. In his horse-drawn wagon, there was a sack of corn and a sack of sweet potatoes, a few packets of seeds, a shotgun and a few shells, a frying pan, several pewter dishes and forks, and a cast iron pot. There were also the tools he would need to clear the land and build a house: 2 chopping axes, a broadaxe foot adze, a crosscut saw, an auger bite, a froe, and drawing knife. His wife, Emma, 5 years younger than he, held the baby as gently as possible as the wagon bounced over an old Indian trail that skirted to the east of Okefenokee Swamp and then turned due south. Tobias had owned 40 acres of red Georgia clay, which he had tried to farm and failed. When he sold the cabin and land, he had enough money to buy only what was in the wagon. He spoke all over the state, became very popular, and he wrote me this letter. This is part of a letter he wrote me. He said, the night before the event in Bartow, Iris, that's my mother, and I were the guests of the Historical Society and the Henshaw family, the owners of the Chalet Suzanne at Lake Wells. The cheapest thing on the menu was $55. The steak is $66.50, which I had. You can imagine how good it feels to eat a $150 meal, say thanks, and walk out, wallet intact, and not pay for a room that costs $225 per night. Sometimes this celebrity business is not so bad after all, but at other times it's a pain in the rear. He knew that he wasn't going to be on the speaking circuit much more. He knew he was just too tired and this had taken too big of a toll on him, so he said something to me that totally changed my life. He said, if you make a video of my talks, you'll sell thousands of them. And me, being the entrepreneur that I am, I did that. I said, okay, Dad, let's do it. And so then getting him to sit down and do it was a different matter. He really wasn't ready quite then, but eventually I went back there several more times. He did sit down for me, and I videotaped him. And these clips you've been seeing of him talking are excerpts from that video. There's a lot more to it than I've shown you, of course. We called it Patrick Smith's Florida, A Sense of Place. Well, he has received just about every award I think there is to receive in Florida. Well, my story's coming to an end now, and just like Dad's story is coming to an end. I know I've had so many people ask me, will there be another book? Will there be another Land Remembered? No, there won't be. You know, he's not going to write any more books. What we have is what we have. But he's left us with an incredible gift of the books and the characters. And once you read these books, for me, and I think for a lot of other people, the characters become part of you. And you can't drive through Florida again if you've read a Land Remembered and not see it a different way. Think of Emma and Tobias out there trying to make a living in this wilderness. One of the essays he wrote, I took a piece out of it. He says, why is it important to remember the past? Well, if you'll become familiar with the Florida of a long time ago, you can, in your mind's eye, see all those once-was things as you drive along Florida roads and highways. It becomes a mental game, a trip into a fascinating land, a journey that will remain in your mind and heart forever. Good morning, Panhandle Outdoor viewers.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Okay, welcome back. Glad you're with us this morning. Let's first take a look at our fish and game forecast for today. Our times now, we're looking at this morning 2:52 to 4:52. We've just passed that time. But this afternoon, 3:16 to 5:16. Excellent time. If you can get off work a little bit early and go sit in a tree stand, it'll be an excellent time to do it. And the question always comes, you know, how long do you sit in a tree stand? You ask yourself that question at daybreak when you're sitting in a tree stand. I always do it. Now, how long am I going to sit here? 1 hour, 2 hours? Or this time of year, and I use this past weekend as a perfect example. This time of year, stay in it as long as you can. And, you know, if you even have to bring a snack and all, and because I saw that buck about 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and I would actually have gotten out of a tree stand and walked around another area and came back to it, and when I saw him, and so I really wasn't prepared. So, but this time of year, we know we're getting right close to the rut, and some rut is already going in some places. Stay in it as long as you can, and just enjoy the tranquility. I'd gotten that because the wind had picked up a little bit. And you know, just always ask a question: how long do I stay in? And this time of year, as long as you can. Now, also, I mentioned the tip of the day. I was thinking while I'm in a tree stand, I think about what I want to talk about the coming week and all. One thing was, here I am hunting, but I know fishing right around the corner made me think about the tip of the day. And the tip of the day is, hunters, go start your engines. And I'm bad about doing it. You know, I haven't had my boat out in a little while, and we've got to start our engines during this time, during the winter, during Christmas break, and during January. Just get over and run your engine a couple of minutes. You know, of course, make sure it's hooked up and all, and get that boat motor, keep it going, and check that gas. You know, that old gas, we'll talk about it over and over again. That old gas is bad for us. So go ahead and just stop whatever you're doing. I'm going to do it sometime this week, and go out one afternoon and just run your engine for a couple of minutes and just make sure you got good gas in there, okay? Now, I want to look at the FWC report. I never get enough chance to go over all the FWC arrests they get in here. It's fascinating. Every time I get one, they send these out on a regular basis. Every time I get one, I look at them and I just shake my head in amazement at how I don't know the word for it, crazy people are sometimes breaking the law when they know the law is there. Let's start off in Walton County. Officer Ken White was contacted by a landowner after the landowner observed someone was trespassing on his property and observed him near some turkeys near one of his feeders. And sure enough, the Officer White came on, he searched the area and found a turkey carcass that had been disposed of. So now he's investigating to see who the perpetrator was. So maybe they'll find a good conclusion of that. Let's go up here in Jackson County. Officer Hank Forehand, Scott Castles, and Lieutenant Mark Clements were to detail in Graceville after receiving information of night hunting. And you know, that's the best thing we can do is, as citizens, let them call them up, let them know. And it goes on down, and they actually put it up. And they had to stay a couple of nights, but about midnight one night, this guy and his girlfriend drove up and shot 5 times with a .22, and the deer didn't move. Of course, and they went out, arrested them for night hunting and shooting from the roadway. So that's only 2. I had about 6 of them read, but I've run out of time, folks. I had another day put in here. And glad you watch the show. We appreciate your viewership, appreciate you supporting our sponsors, and we've got a great week lined up in Panhandle Outdoors. So you stick with us, and sometime today you do something good for somebody, and God bless.
Thanks for joining us for Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors features hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.